Welcome, everyone. I'm going to go ahead and get started. My name is Dan. This is Shamatha meditation in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition. Is anyone at the temple here for the first time? Anyone's first time meditating, doing Shamatha meditation? Okay. Shamatha meditation is really just placing your attention on an object, and when you get distracted, bringing your attention back to that object. So you may have done that before. Just put a fancy label on it.
Anyways.
So far in this, Shamatha meditation class, we've gone over Dzogchen, which there's different schools of Tibetan Buddhism. Dzogchen is the Nyingma school, and then the Bun tradition that was there before Indian Buddhism came to Tibet, also practices Dzogchen. So we did that for a bit. We've covered Mahamudra, which is the Kagyu school. So now we're getting to the last school that we're going to cover, which is the Gelugpa school. So that's actually the school of Tibetan Buddhism that the Dalai Lama is the leader of. And they practice something called Lam Rim, which means stages of the path. So enlightenment in that system is very graduated. You start here and you go to the step along. That school is very intellectual, very into logic, debate, a lot of study, and it has its advantages and drawbacks, but they've probably more carefully preserved like the original Buddhist teachings from India, more so than the other Tibetan Buddhist schools. And so we've done quite a few things here as Shamatha meditation objects: breath, imaginary objects, rocks, Buddha statues. Excuse me. We've actually done like different variations, and we did like spaciousness of the mind, and we've done quite a few different objects. The Gelug are kind of interesting in that what they typically do is they use analytical meditation to come up with a conceptual meditation object. So they'll analyze a teaching of the Buddha, because you can meditate on a concept. Metta meditation is one of those where you're meditating on a concept of love. So they'll take maybe a pretty advanced Buddhist teaching, and they'll contemplate it until they get it to like a concept that they can focus their attention on, and then that's what their meditation object is. So we will be doing some of that over this and then the next several times. This one, though, is going to be an easier one. So do they do any physical objects? Yes, they do one, but it's funny because we've done rocks in this class a couple of times, and Tsongkhapa, who's kind of the founder of Lam Rim, said that if you meditate on a rock, you don't know what you're doing. So his argument is that you should be meditating on the Buddha because the Buddha is holy. You should be meditating on like an image of the Buddha, a statue of the Buddha, because the Buddha is holy. Why wouldn't you meditate on something holy? I think that kind of starts pushing an almost religious take of Buddhism. Personally, I think the Buddha he was an extraordinary person, obviously, like Einstein or, Copernicus or Aristotle or Newton, but he was also just an ordinary person. I don't personally attribute him as being some kind of deity, some kind of prophetic figure. But similar to other historical figures, he started a world-changing movement. And it wasn't only philosophy, and this is especially stressed in Gelug Buddhism, that it was really a scientific movement of a different kind. So science tries to figure out the objective world that we can see with our senses through measurement and experimentation. In Buddhism, we look within through meditation, first calming and focusing the mind through shamatha, and then exploring the subjective mind, the inner world, subjectively, not through measurement instruments, but through the actual observer itself. So it's not as reproducible. It is reproducible in a way because two people can reproduce the same result internally and observe it internally. But it's not reproducible that two people can hold up a measuring stick to it and say, oh, we got the same result. And so when the Buddha said, we don't take things on faith, we try to actually replicate what the Buddha discovered, we try to replicate that in our own mind stream. So we can actually, just as a scientist could replicate someone's steps and recreate an experiment, Newton could say, this is the laws of gravity, and someone else could set it up and go, oh, yeah, this is the laws of gravity. So when the Buddha said, take my teachings like a goldsmith, test my teachings like a goldsmith tests gold, it wasn't just like, hey, if you don't trust me, go ahead and test this out. It's actually how we're supposed to practice. We're supposed to rediscover these teachings in our meditation and not just take them on faith. If you take them on faith, you'll never understand them like you would if you just believe on faith that these are the laws of physics and don't actually ever see them in action, or if you're a scientist, discover them for yourself, validate them for yourself, you're not going to have the same understanding. So if we follow the steps, we should reach the same conclusion, ideally without needing to be told what that conclusion is. So one very concise explanation of steps to enlightenment is in the Anapanasati Sutra. It's not the same as the Satipatthana Sutra. It's not the four foundations of mindfulness. This is like the Lamrim, it's a graduated path to full enlightenment. It's step by step by step. So it's in 4 tetrads. The first tetrad, you're exploring and taming the physiological basis of the mind. And that's what we'll be looking at today. And that's as far as we'll go because it takes quite a long time to be qualified to do the second tetrad. But the second tetrad, you're exploring and taming the neurochemical basis of the mind. In the third tetrad, you're exploring and taming the psychological basis of mind, which includes cognitive and emotional. And then in the fourth tetrad is when you're actually doing what's called vipassana on the qualities of all dharmas and attaining enlightenment, the same way that the Buddha did when he sat under the Bodhi tree. So it's kind of like a 25-year-old form of neuroscience, but again, based on that introspection kind of science, and not like what they do with modern neuroscience, where they set up experiments and then look at brain scans. And I think there's some value to looking at brain scans. I think there's also some value to actually the observer looking at his own mind can tell you things that brain scans couldn't. So what else do they meditate on? And as we just discussed, really every other meditation that I found is, well, they actually do have creation stage, which is part of their tantra. But that you have to have empowerments, you have to have permission, you have to have a guru, you have to make vows. So obviously we're not going to touch that in this class. But they do use that a lot of times as their replacement for shamatha. But for the starting point actually isn't meditating on a Buddha image. There's something called 5 hindrances. You might have heard them in the Pali Canon. In Tibetan Buddhism, they're just a bit different. So the 5 hindrances are desire, anger, obscuration, pride, and over-discursiveness, over-conceptuality, basically the overthinking mind. So the one that most people relate to is the overthinking, over-conceptual, discursive mind. So each has an antidote, and like I said, each antidote is this sort of conceptual, analytical concept that you create analytically, and then you use that as your meditation object. But again, we're starting with the easiest one. It's the most grounded because we're trying to antidote the discursive conceptual mind. So if we use a purely conceptual object, it probably wouldn't work very well. So it's actually that first tetrad of mindfulness, or of the Anapanasati, which deals with the physiological basis of the mind. And that makes a lot of sense. We're grounding our mind in its physiological basis as an antidote for the overconceptualization and overthinking. And that overthinking kind of aligns with, in the Pali Canon, what's called agitation, restlessness, regret. And again, like regret, you're thinking about mistakes you made or agitated about something that happened. So it kind of lines up with the overconceptualization. So the physiological basis of mind is in the 5 aggregates. It's the skandha of form. So this is basically the body that's subject to birth, old age, sickness, and death. I'm sure if you guys have been around Buddhism for any length of time, you've heard that. That's what the Buddha saw initially as the problem with the world, that there was birth, old age, sickness, and death. So then, as the mind depends on this physical body that's subject to those things, the body depends on the breath, is kind of the thesis or the hypothesis of this whole first tetrad. And we can discover this for ourselves through analytical meditation. So the idea that there's certain qualities of the breath that correspond to a physiological basis that's agitated, restless, and disturbed. There are other qualities of the breath that are correlated to a physiological basis that's calm, cool, collected, focused. So the breath with that is correlated to agitated, restless, and disturbed is called the short breath. The qualities of breath that lead to a calm, cool, collected, and focused basis are called the long breath. And one thing that's not in the commentaries that I think is interesting is you could also have a physiological basis that's lazy, sleepy, tired, passing out as you're trying to meditate, and they don't really have a breath for that. So it seems like long breath might actually, there might actually be some times where you're really tired and maybe you need a little short breath to get you going. So it's presented a lot of times as short breath equals bad, long breath equals good. But I think realistically, and I guess if you're dealing with agitation and restlessness, then that's probably true. And on the other hand, if you're dealing with, trying to keep your eyes open, then you might need a little short breath traits in your life. So let's go through the 4 verses of the first tetrad. Tetrad means like group of 4. So there's 4 verses in each tetrad. There's 4 tetrads, 16 verses. If you get through all of them, you're enlightened. So clearly there's kind of you can do the first 4 together, and there's kind of like a big step up, and then you can do the next 4, the next tetrad, and then there's a big step up, and so on. Enlightenment shouldn't be and isn't considered easy in these stages of the path. There are other techniques that you can be enlightened like that. If you just get it, this is not one of those systems. So I'm going to read through this really quick. The first verse is, while breathing in long, he fully comprehends, I breathe in long. While breathing out long, he fully comprehends, I breathe out long. While breathing in short, he fully comprehends, I breathe in short. While breathing out short, he fully comprehends, I breathe out short. He trains himself. Those were the first 2 verses. Then 3 is, he trains himself, thoroughly experiencing all bodies. I shall breathe in, I shall breathe out. Another translation for that is attending to the whole body. I shall breathe in, I shall breathe out. And then the 4th step is, he trains himself, calming the body conditioner. I shall breathe in, I shall breathe out. Another translation is relaxing the system of the body. I shall breathe in, I shall breathe out. Okay, so those are the meditation instructions. Here we go. No, just kidding. I'll guide you guys through this because I know that's probably a little confusing as to what you're actually supposed to do. Fortunately, there's tons of commentaries that have been written on it. So I'm mainly going off of a commentary by Bhikkhu Buddha Dasa called Mindfulness with Breathing, a Manual for Serious Beginners. It's a great book. He was a Thai Buddhist monk, not Tibetan, but I like his commentary. So it's a lot more descriptive than what I've been finding on. I have referenced different commentaries from the Gelug tradition, Tibetan tradition, but I prefer the way that this guy breaks it down. So there's a kind of a mix of both in what we're going to do. So any questions on this before we get started? We're gonna get started with a guided meditation. We're not just gonna.
There's one confusing element.
Yeah.
Here it states short breath, long breath,
Mm-hmm.
as if they're both valid. Then you
as if they're, I'm sorry, I missed that word.
As if they're both equal in a way.
Okay.
But then before they said short breath is not good. So where's the contradiction here?
There's not, because they're just saying observe. It says, well, that's interesting, because it does say, while breathing in long, he fully comprehends, I breathe in long.
That's what they mean also by short breath, is people who only breathe in the upper part. But that's not what they mean originally. They mean short breath, it still goes all the way.
In the commentary that I'm going off of, short breath is actually shorthand for a lot of different qualities of a breath that is supporting an unhealthy physiological basis. So if you've heard a different definition, I don't have the capability to argue which one is correct.
Did not harm and Ajahn Lee, though. I don't know if you're familiar with Ajahn Lee. He was forest tradition.
Mm-hmm.
His books are here. He has a whole book on keeping the breath in mind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So if you could find 800 contradictions between how any of these sutras are presented, and that's kind of a problem when the entire text is breathing in long, he comprehends, I breathe in long, breathing out long, he comprehends, I breathe out long. That's really wide open to interpretation. So that's one of the reasons why there's such a variety of different traditions. What's interesting, I just noticed, because the commentary I'm going through, you're not intentionally breathing in long or breathing out long when you follow these steps. So it's interesting that it's while breathing in long, while breathing out long. But in the commentary, you're basically noticing, because you don't control your breath. That's a big thing in most Buddhism, is you're not intentionally controlling your breath. You're sitting there and observing when your breath is. So in this commentary, when you're breathing, when you're doing the first step, you're just noticing those qualities of long breath in your current breath. And we'll get to this in the guided meditation, or even remembering or recollecting a time when your breath was long. Same for the short breath. You're not controlling your breath. And again, you might have heard differently in a different system. So is there any other questions? Okay, so go ahead and get ready for meditation. Any posture that's alert, relaxed, and stable, straight spine. You might want to close your eyes, or you can also just slightly open your eyes to let in some light. If fully closed eyes, it's going to make you sleepy. And again, breathe naturally. There's no need to control the breath in any way. So go ahead and ding us in. And first, just be aware of your breathing. And you can even think, I am breathing in, I am breathing out. Since this is analytical meditation, you are allowed to think. Also, this is an exploration. There's no wrong answers. There's no expectation of what to find. So as you continue breathing, look for qualities of the long breath. Are you breathing slowly? Is each breath long over time? Are you breathing deeply? Maybe each breath filling the abdomen first and then lifting the chest. Is the breath flowing easily? Is the breathing relaxed? Is the breath without friction? Quiet, without noise? Is the breath flowing naturally, without any effort? You can also think about other times or situations where the breath was different than it is now. Can you find any qualities of the long breath in other memories, situations? Or do you find these qualities now in contrast to other times when your breath was not having these qualities? And while you are allowed to think in analytical meditation, we're trying to come to know these qualities of breath like you know the taste of chocolate, experientially, not just as labels or words, not just as thoughts. really getting to know the feeling of these qualities to whatever extent you're experiencing them now or can recollect experiencing them in other specific memories or just general situations. Now we're going to step 2, to the qualities of the short breath. Are you breathing quickly? Is each breath short over time? Is your breathing shallow? Maybe constricted in your abdomen and only lifting and lowering the chest? Does the breath feel labored, restless, anxious, or uneasy? Is the breath rough and with audible noise? And are you needing to control the breath with effort? Again, you can think about other times when the breath was short and look for these qualities in your memory of other times, other situations. Or if you're connecting to qualities of the short breath now, you can contrast that to times when the breath was more having the long qualities. But again, whatever helps you connect to these experientially, not just a conceptual mental understanding of what is being talked about. Really want to be able to feel it and feel the difference between these long breath qualities and short breath qualities. Now we're going to move on to step 3. Now that hopefully you're familiar with long breath versus short breath. we're going to examine how these qualities of breath condition the body. So first, simply follow the energy of the breath as it nourishes the body. You may feel coolness or heat as the physical breath and energy of the breath move through your body. You might feel pleasant sensations as the oxygen is absorbed into the blood in the body. You might feel pleasant sensations as CO2 is kicked out and recycled to the lungs, back out into the air. On the inhale, you might feel sensations of clarity and energy as oxygen reaches your head. On the inhale, you might feel a bit of tingling and energy as the oxygen reaches your limbs. You might feel the opposite of that, somewhat of a lack of clarity and energy at the peak of the exhale as your oxygen levels are a little bit lower. But just try to follow that energy of the breath and the oxygen. And however you experience that, don't just think about it. But if you can connect to any of that experientially as an actual feeling, as a sensation, that's what we're going for here. Now we're going to come to the analysis part. So, and again, you can answer no. You might find this or not find this, but the question is, do the qualities that you identified as long breath and short breath correlate in any way with how you feel in the body? So if you found qualities of the long breath, can you identify any feelings of the body correlated with that? Same with the short breath. And I don't want to lead you guys to like the right answer, but just to help a little bit, you can consider qualities of the body like being relaxed versus being wound up, feeling easy and secure versus feeling on edge and anxious, feeling comfortable and still versus feeling shifty and fidgety. And you can use your current experience, you can use memories of past events, moments, situations, and see if you notice any correlation between the qualities of breath that we discussed for long and short, and any qualities of body, the ones that I mentioned, or any qualities of body that you can think of. So consider that very same question, whether the breath affects, correlates, conditions the physiology. But now focus on the breath and body as it relates to your emotions. So do certain qualities of the body as conditioned by the long breath or the short breath act as sort of a basis or ground level state for your emotions and emotional reactions. Do certain qualities of the breath correlate with general feelings of well-being, calm, joy, that are sort of there as a baseline regardless of circumstances? Or other qualities of breath that correlate to general feelings of being uneasy, irritable, unhappy, again, regardless of circumstances, but certainly affecting your emotional reactions as things do occur. Okay, now we're going to consider the same question, but now focusing on the breath and physiological body as it relates to your cognitive mind. So how do the qualities of the body, as conditioned by the breath, or the breath itself, act as a basis or ground level for the thinking conceptual mind? So maybe consider how long breath qualities versus short breath qualities might relate to different mind states, like having a general state of clarity, vividness, well-directed, controlled thoughts. Or if certain qualities of breath would correlate to a general state of agitation, feeling overwhelmed, being easily distracted, mind jumping around, not being able to stay on topic. And again, I'm not trying to imply any kind of conclusion that you should just jump to. Reflect and analyze. And again, try to connect to something experientially, not just kind of logically going, oh, if A, then B, without really feeling it. Only one more step, and it's easier than the last one. This is the calming the body conditioner, or relaxing the system of the body. So the question is, with anything or everything that you've discovered through this brief meditation, and again, don't expect the answer is yes. Can you willfully cultivate the qualities of the long breath? Slow, deep, easy, relaxed, quiet, natural, and effortless. In order to benefit and relax the related systems of your physiological body, how your body feels, your emotional basis, and your cognitive mind. So your first instinct might be to purposely slow your breathing. And this is an exploration. You can try anything you want. Just keep in mind that if you try this out, by manually overriding your natural breath and directly controlling, forcing your breath to be long, that's somewhat limited, as that kind of breath would never be natural or effortless. But you can try that and see if it works. You can try directly relaxing your breath without manually controlling it. You can try relaxing your body and see if that cultivates those long breath qualities. You can try relaxing your mind and see if that cultivates those long breath qualities. If you try something and it doesn't work, that doesn't mean you failed. That just means you did an experiment and observed the result. So you can go ahead and open your eyes. You might want to stretch and move around a little bit. I failed to welcome everyone on YouTube. If you're watching online, you can type your questions at any time, including now, and I'll try to get to them. I will get to them. For those of us here in person, how'd that go for everyone?
That was tough. Yeah, I feel like I raced to get food before this when I raced over here. So immediately you went into the long breath, and I noticed that little short breath.
Yeah.
And then you went into the short breath, and I feel like my breath started to get a little bit longer. Then when you went into the emotional and the cognitive aspects, that was all over the place. So
Okay.
I did not pay attention enough.
Did you feel like you learned anything?
Definitely, yeah.
Okay,
I need to
good.
pay more attention to the breath, but yeah, I think kind of what you mentioned, like you didn't want to put words in the list, but I noticed when I have that short breath, I'm usually agitated the rest of the
Yeah. That's what you're supposed to discover.
Yeah.
But this is kind of like taking a tiny little bite of a dish and expecting to get full. A meditation like this you should, we had to push through this so fast. We only get an hour. So if, normally you would have an opportunity to spend a lot more time with these steps and a lot more time contemplating before you really experientially connected to some of these concepts. But that's good that you leave. And you feel like you really connected to the truth or the.
Sure.
Yeah.
Observing the breath and
Mhm.
letting it diagnose your heart and mind.
Yeah. Excellent.
Yeah, I thought it was difficult to try and connect, like the experiential,
Mhm.
how I experienced the short and long breath in my life, and what that's been like.
Mhm.
It's difficult because you're not aware of my breathing,
Mhm.
where my breath is at in life. I thought my heartbeat, that's something I've been more aware of. It's like the heartbeat.
Yeah.
My breath, in terms of my breath, that's something that I'm trying to connect it
Mhm.
experientially, and how that's manifested in emotion, thinking,
Yeah.
concepts. That was difficult, trying to connect it to something.
Yeah, especially if you haven't done that, because this is a really difficult. On the one hand, you kind of have to do this on the cushion. But on the other hand, you kind of want to go like run a few laps and see what that does to your breath, and and lay down, watch some TV, see what that does to your breath. And of course, you can do that throughout the day if you're devoted to doing this kind of practice. You can make this a mindfulness practice and observe through the day. The qualities of long breath, qualities of short breath. What's your state of mind? What's your emotional state? And how do you feel in your body? And kind of trying to tie all those together.
Yeah, kind of check in, do like a little.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think of like anxiety, restlessness, agitation.
Mhm.
I definitely associate with the heart. Sweat,
Well, and I'm pretty sure the heartbeat is also correlated pretty closely to these qualities of breath. How are you so aware of your heartbeat?
I just.
You can feel it, or
I feel it.
yeah. 'Cause I used to have this
I feel
app where
it.
you
I
would,
hear it.
because you could, with this app, it would like play drums at the rate of your heartbeat, and what you would try to do is slow, like you would just try to like tune into that and like bring your heart rate down. And it was weird. It's like biofeedback, right? So there's some things that we're not aware of normally, and if we are aware of them, like the heartbeat, we actually find that we have some ability to control it. But that's interesting that you're more in tune with your heartbeat than with your breath, because typically one is easier to monitor than the other.
Well, then I was trying to think, where's my breath at? When, let's say my heart is beating quick, so I was trying to think of like exercise or when I'm anxious.
Yeah, I mean, there should be a correlation.
You think my breath would be
Yeah, absolutely,
quicker,
absolutely.
something like
The only difference is that your heartbeat is probably only. Well, I guess you could find different qualities of your heartbeat, like I feel like it's pounding out of your chest.
Well, that could be happening, but your breath would still be.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But if your breath is,
Like if I'm exercising.
yeah, I would think your heart though would follow eventually with your breath. So you exercise your heart, so your heart's beating fast. But then if you sit down and start breathing slow and calm, I've actually done that too on like the exercise bike, where it's got the you can see what your heart rate is, and then I'll try like different kinds of breathing to see if I can bring my heart rate down. So yeah, that's interesting. I haven't thought about this with the heartbeat in it, and the commentaries don't say anything about your heart rate. But if you're aware of your heartbeat, that's definitely something you should throw into the mix. But just your heart being an automatic part of your automatic nervous system, I could see that it would. Yeah, I mean, it should line up at some point. I wouldn't imagine someone would be like totally calm, totally at peace, unless they have some kind of medical issue and their heart would be like, you know what I mean? Or that someone would be like super agitated and super like, and their heart is just like, boom. So it seems like there would be some correlation.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're not supposed to figure this all out in this 20 minutes that we did it. But it's the purpose of introducing you guys to this is just to get you thinking along this line. If this is a meditation that appeals to you, you could look into this more.
Well, it's like don't put the effort in, because then it's not effortless. To try it out, with a long breath.
Yeah. Well,
Because you want it to be effort.
You want, yeah. I mean, there's some traditions where you want your whole Buddhist practice to be effortless, right? The Gelug and Lamrim and this is definitely an effortful practice, just not an effortful breath. But there are plenty of effortless practices as well that you could try out.
Well, like putting in effort versus being effortless.
Yeah, that's
kind of the point.
That's kind of how I approach the effortless practices. Is if the first thing you do in your Buddhism is some effortless practice, then it's like just getting on a bike and just sitting there. You got to pedal for a while and then do the effortless, and maybe you go somewhere. But yeah, I'm not a big believer in just doing effortless practice, because you can't. How are you going to get up? How are you going to get up over the hill? But effortless is a great way to coast down. So yeah, I like to have a big bag of different meditations to use for different circumstances.
Yeah, some of that's been more like intellectual.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this is probably the least analytical one, because you have that grounding in the physical body, and the next two won't be too bad, but then the last two are going to be probably a little challenging. But I'll try to make them as easy as possible.
Will you be doing the other one next?
Yeah. So in 2 weeks, we'll be doing the antidote for desire, then the antidote for anger, and then the ones that get trickier are the antidotes for pride and the antidote for obscuration. Any other comments, questions?
I feel like I was trying to be as effortless as possible with the breath, like at the end,
Mm-hmm.
the last part. But then I kept on thinking, wait, I'm still thinking about the breath, so I'm not just breathing.
Oh, you're making an effort to be effortless?
Yeah.
We're trying.
So I'm like, what does my breath even feel like when I'm not thinking about it? Like, do I even know? Because I'm never thinking about it.
Yeah, that's one thing I've pointed out in prior classes, is that you can get into that kind of loop of, am I controlling it? Am I not controlling it? And what I encourage people to do in that case is, if you're even at that point, just that's good enough. You can count that as natural breath, because when you're really controlling your breath, you're controlling your breath. And the best, if you're at that point where you're not sure, that's the best that you can do. If you put more energy into it to try to be certain that you're not controlling it, you're just making that problem worse. And so it sounds like you experienced that a little bit. Yeah, cool. Thank you for that. Okay. And I don't see anyone chiming in on the YouTube. So we do have 10 minutes left and one more meditation to do. So I'll move into this pretty close, because now none of that was the actual antidote for discursiveness that is in Gelug. Now that we've had that analytical exercise, we're going to do shamatha focused on the breath, but infused with that steps 1 to 3 analysis. And you can, if you lose that connection to that conceptual understanding that some or all of you have now connected with, you can always drop back to steps 1 through 3 and get it again. But this meditation that we're going to do is actually said to be the best way to accomplish number 4. So if you failed all those ways I suggested, that might be a good thing, because what they actually suggest is that meditating on your breath is the way to accomplish number 4, the way to relax that system of the body. And meditating on your breath with that conceptual knowledge of the steps 1, 2, and 3 kind of supercharges it and gives it that extra Gelug power, effectiveness. So you guys can discover for yourselves whether that works for you or not. So we're going to start by just breathing with that experience of, just like if you learn about some kind of bug or some kind of process, you learn about the weather or something on a computer. The next time that you observe it with that understanding naturally that you gained. You don't have to extra think about it. So we'll start with just breathing, and then I'll guide us through some more specific objects, because shamatha is about putting your attention on something. So we'll go through 3 different attention objects. So go ahead and get in your meditation posture, and we'll jump right into this. So the first object of your attention will be following the breath. So just kind of like we were doing in step 3, following the breath as it comes in. You can just, if you want, you can just follow the breath as it goes down into your belly or your chest, and then as it goes back out through your nostrils. If you want, you can follow the breath into the energy going up into your limbs and your head and back out. Whatever you connected to in step 3, you can just now place your attention on that without any need for further analysis. Now, progressively, the second object of meditation we work towards is along that path, whatever that path is that you chose of following the breath in and out, following the energy in and out. Pick a spot, any single point along that path, and you're going to fix your attention there. This is called guarding, because it's like you have a little sentry, a little guard gate, a little border checkpoint, and you're just watching the energy pass through that gate. A popular place for this is at the nostrils, watching the breath as it comes in and out. But you can pick any spot you want: throat, the top of your nostrils where the air starts to curl back down, your chest, your belly, anywhere you want. Your head, if you're tracking the energy coming in and out of your head. And again, we're trying to do this with that infused, flavored with that understanding of how the qualities of long breath and short breath condition, influence our physiological, emotional, and mental base. So if you lose that clarity, you can jump back and just go through, note the long breath, note the short breath, and pay attention to the whole body, all bodies, and how they're conditioned by the breath. And then drop the analysis and go back to just simple shamatha on the breath guarding the breath without analysis. And we'll only have time to do this last one very briefly. There's actually 2 more stages after this, but they get more difficult, of course. With this, what you do at that point that you've chosen to guard the breath, you imagine a tiny glowing white orb. It can actually be any color you like. White works good. But if there's a color that comes easier to your mind, you can use that instead. Red, yellow, blue. And so now you're guarding the breath, but with that sort of imaginary glowing orb as the guard that is at that point. So in this, your attention is on the glowing white orb and also on the breath as it, or energy, wherever you put that point, as it passes in one direction on the in-breath and in the other direction on the out-breath. As you come out of meditation, you can take a moment to reflect on your experience. Congratulations, everyone, for making it through probably a little bit more difficult of a class, more taxing of a class than some of our previous ones. Any questions or comments before? Did anyone feel that doing that last meditation helped to cultivate the qualities of the long breath and the associated qualities of that more calm physiological basis? This guy's going to sleep, so I think you're calmed. You really calmed down.
Well, just kind of stretching.
No, I'm just kidding. I know you're stretching.
But yeah, so I'm a little definitely calm.
Yeah. It is late too. That you can also blame the time of day. So no one else found that they calmed down at all?
Yeah, definitely. I felt like the guarding technique really took the cognitive load out of meditation.
Okay, good. So your mind was able to go there and not jump around and think about stuff.
Totally.
Good. Okay. So yeah.
I like the white orb
Yeah.
imagery. I feel like I'm a very visual imagery just floats around in my head.
Mhm.
So sometimes the thoughts arise from that, and so being able to keep both my visual aspect of my brain occupied, actually helps me focus on that and together.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's we did white orb meditations just as the whole meditation was on these imaginary white orbs. And yeah, it because sometimes when you get distracted, especially if you're an imaginative person, you're not giving your imagination anything to do. So it's creating all these images of what you're going to do next and what you did later and the guy that pissed you off. And if you can take your imagination and harness it and focus it instead of just letting it run wild, that can be a very powerful technique for some people. And even in that creation stage practice that I was telling you earlier, that you have to have the permission and vow to do it every day and all this stuff before they'll even teach it to you. But the gist of it is that you're imagining this very, very intricate and detailed scene where a deity, they have all these arms and they have stuff in each arm and they have people around them, and you both train and completely absorb your imagination into creating almost a VR experience in your own head. So yeah, that's something you can always go back to. Okay, we're 3 minutes over, so unless there's anything else, we'll do a quick transfer of merit. So you can join your palms if you like. May any merit gained from this practice benefit all the living beings without exception, and may all beings find their way to a place of health, safety, abundance, and peace. Before you go, our host, Anna, has a few quick announcements.
Hello, friends. I'm Anna Tenais-Holston. The Dharmabumtemple was opened 19 years ago to introduce Buddhist practice to those who show up. And anyone who leaves here, they're not nuns, monks, gurus, or teachers, and no one's looking for students. They're just practitioners sharing their interpretation of the practice, just like Dan did tonight. Thank you. Every night we have different classes led by different people from various Buddhist traditions. There's a recovery sangha that meets several times a week for anyone experiencing addiction. There's also a food redistribution program every Thursday at 4:30. There's classes and programs every day, and everything's always free. There's a silent meditation Monday through Friday at 8 a.m. and 12 p.m. There's a full schedule on the website, and then everything is listed above the shoe rack out there. Also, there is the lending library. If you see a book you like in there, feel free to take it, bring it back when you're done. You can also bring in Buddhist books to donate. There's a donation box in there. And as you guys are leaving, would you please just straighten your seat or cushion, and if everybody can help out with closing the little windows and things, that'd be really helpful. So thank you so much for being here, and hope you are well, and hope to see you again. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for showing up.
That was great.
Oh, thank you.
I love that.